This lesson is the Bronze Age to make you a Bronze Age expert. Let me ask you this question. What is your second favorite Bronze Age kingdom? I could guess it's a kingdom with incredible structures, weapons, bronze weapons. Of course, you have to have bronze if you're going to be in the Bronze Age. You've got written language and you have a lot of trade. So when you think Bronze Age, it's pretty exciting. This time period, the Bronze Age, it's like all these civilizations are growing. It's like they're building this house of cards. It's getting bigger and taller and stronger. But what happens to a house of cards? I'm Mr. Hall. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. So what pops into your mind first when you hear Bronze Age? This lesson will make you a Bronze Age expert so you can think about your favorite kingdom, your second favorite kingdom. It's an exciting time, lots of innovation, growth, civilizations that are building a house of cards. Over 2,100 years, you see all these different civilizations and then it collapses. It's an interesting story. So this lesson is number 24 in your ancient history course. And it's going to make you a Bronze Age expert by asking some big questions and discovering how it shaped history and how it still shapes your journey. So first, let's define the Bronze Age. Let's get a good definition. Make sure you know about the innovations that go beyond mixing copper and tin together. We're going to journey to the important places, probably what most people's favorite Bronze Age kingdom is. We'll take a look at legendary Egypt. But maybe if we go outside of that, we could visit some of these other kingdoms so that you could find your second favorite. And finally, we'll investigate the tensions, the struggles, the problems that bring the collapse of the Bronze Age and discover the truths and the wisdom about all these people being connected and some of the mysteries about why it collapsed. So stay through to the end of this, because by the end, we want you to be a Bronze Age expert. So what is the Bronze Age? Well, it's a time period in history, 3,300 BC to circa 1,200 BC. And it comes after a brief Copper Age, comes after the Stone Age, right? Because these ages are named for the materials they make tools out of. So stone tools, copper tools, very inferior to when they realized that tin, check out that tin, about 12%. What would you say? A good recipe is 12% tin mixed into your copper. And when you do that, you create a vastly superior product, way sharper, holds an edge. So if you're going to make a sword, some armor, maybe a helmet, think about the advantage that you would have because you knew what would happen when you mix 12% tin into your copper. This is an unbelievable bridge out of the Stone Age, all the way to the Iron Age. Bronze is going to last quite a long time. And these weapons, these tools for 2,100 years are the latest and greatest invention. It's called an alloy. Bronze is an alloy. You can mix metals together, and it's a mixture, so not a chemical reaction, but it's really exciting when you see a sword like this or some armor in a museum that's made from bronze. It comes from this bronze time period, the Bronze Age. These metalworkers would have been geniuses, superheroes to discover this, and very valuable workers to the leaders, to the kingdoms of this age. So a mixture of 88% copper, 12% tin is the great invention of the Bronze Age that defines an era. Some of you might have heard an era called the Information Age. Are we in it now? Is our tool information more important than anything else? The fact that I'm teaching this lesson right now on the platform that I am on is a testament to the fact we might be living in the Information Age. But making bronze was difficult. It's complex. You can't just dig up rocks in your background, melt them down. People had skill. We needed materials that were not available close by. It's time for international trade. We're going to have to go to the map and check out the Bronze Age world. And let's see, how far away would we have to sail in order to find some of the resources that we need? Well, first you need to be able to sail. How are you going to build a ship? And Egypt does not have lumber. Let's check the map. Where do you see lumber? This would have to be cedar lumber because cedar has the special properties. It doesn't rot in water. And it looks like in the Phoenician areas, north of Canaan, and also in Crete. You already know about the Minoans, and that was one of the things that helped them develop. And same with the Phoenicians, and now with the Bronze Age trade, we can build ships and we can sail as far away as we need in order to get the materials. So now we're going to build ships and sail. We know people did it because we found Minoan pottery all over this map. Egyptian treasures were found on Crete because Egypt would have to trade for lumber. They also needed olive oil, wine, fine cloth, purple dye, purple fabrics coming from Phoenicia. There's all kinds of evidence to trade. We love shipwrecks nowadays. We didn't love them back then. But a shipwreck tells us so much. And that's where we get a lot of this idea. But how far away do we need to go in order to get tin? Let's check out tin resources. How far away do we need to go? We see a little bit of tin in Anatolia, a little bit of tin there close to Greece, but the best stashes of tin were way far out to the west. And if you mix that with copper, you know the name Cyprus, the island of Cyprus, it actually just means Copper Island. Copper they knew about, tin they knew about, and at the point that they could trade all across the Bronze Age map, it shows our interconnectedness. It shows the Bronze Age is able to grow. An exciting time? Yes. So this should probably sound familiar. You've studied Bronze Age before. And I asked you, who's your second favorite Bronze Age kingdom? Maybe Mesopotamia because they made writing, or the Minoans because they had good olive oil. I don't know. But it was kind of a joke because don't most people say that their favorite is this next one that we're about to talk about? And this next one, I'll give you a hint. It started during the early Bronze Age, maybe around 3000 BC when a prince and a princess from two different kingdoms had a big marriage and united upper and lower kingdoms. During the early Bronze Age, they started and had their greatest accomplishment, what most people think are super tall structures that have never been outdone around the entire world, even still today. Debatable. During the Middle Bronze Age, this civilization had significant struggle. They had a priestly uprising, kind of like a civil war. They had an outside migration of a significant population of people. Kind of creates a power confusion. Another Hyksos people come in there and invade. And their Middle Bronze Age period's kind of sketchy. But by the Late Bronze Age, and there's a huge clue right there because look at those gigantic structures, but 1550, to begin the Late Bronze Age, this civilization is now independent and free of some of these other struggles and those Hyksos invaders. And they start their golden age. This next segment is about Egypt. It's what most people think is their favorite Bronze Age kingdom. And it's because of the pyramids, or it's because of their style. Egyptians have a lot of style, a lot of unique style points with more than just the architecture, more than just what you see with the pyramids, the temples, the Sphinx. Bronze Age Egypt, and now we're going to focus on their new kingdom, Egypt, when they were at their top level of power and authority in this region. It's going to be an empire. They stretch beyond. Egypt is an empire. It stretches beyond just the banks of the Nile River. They are significant and now a superpower during the Late Bronze Age, because there's those bronze swords sitting right there next to, it looks like some Greek olive oil coming from Crete. Lots of trade. They are big trade partners because Egypt is the #1 supplier of grain. Now let's say that that's you in that picture, not the Egyptian. It's you're one of the merchants, or maybe you're one of the kids of the merchants. Maybe you are coming to Egypt for the very first time. You've sailed around that entire huge map of the Bronze Age world, but you notice Egypt looks different. Egypt has more style, and you hear about these pyramids, and so you decide to sail up the Nile River because the pyramids are not that close to the Mediterranean Sea. You've got to go up the river a little bit. So now you're like a tourist, and you're visiting this famous, mysterious place you've heard about, everybody talks about, and you want to see the pyramids. And as they're, poking up over the horizon, you're sailing up, you're going south in the Nile, and you start to wonder, who did this? How are these stones fitting? Who cut them? Who paid for them? Like, how rich does Egypt have to be in order to pay for these incredible pyramids? And how powerful does a pharaoh have to be in order to command something like this? How did they cut all that stone? How did they pay for it? And look, like, it's actually sheets of limestone that are laid on top, so it's gleaming white in the sun. We don't see that way anymore. It's long since been picked clean and used for something else. But who cut all that stone? Who paid for it? Who ordered it? How powerful does a pharaoh need to be to ask his people to build structures like this? You know that they're tombs. And that was all from the Old Kingdom, from the early Bronze Age. And now we're going to talk New Kingdom, late Bronze Age. That's when Egypt had its strongest power. And maybe this pharaoh that you see here could be one of the strong pharaohs from the New Kingdom, when they had the most military success. They're now going to be considered an empire because they've conquered lands outside of their own country. They have more than just their kingdoms. They are taking over other kingdoms as well. So Egypt is an empire. They have maximum style points. The pharaohs are incredibly strong. And maybe that was Thutmose III, one of the greatest military geniuses that Egypt has ever seen. He had some co-ruling powers with his mother Hatshepsut, one of the great female pharaohs of Egyptian history. And not long after that was a revolutionary pharaoh named Akhenaten. It was Amenhotep IV who changed his name, and he changed the religion. This is a polytheistic Egypt. Like, pretty much everybody is polytheistic during the Bronze Age. The religion is multiple gods. Polytheism means many gods. But Pharaoh Akhenaten changed it to make it a monotheistic religion briefly. And there's only one other group of monotheistic people, and they had just recently migrated out of Egypt. That would be the Hebrew people. So Akhenaten, a powerful pharaoh, formerly known as Amenhotep IV, he is followed by King Tut, not that powerful of a pharaoh, but it's around the time that they switched the religion back. There's just so much power associated with priests, their roles, their duties that they have. They're not going to give up power very easily. But we do start to look at the records of Ramses II. Maybe he's Ramses the Great. The records that are typically written are business records, but for the first time, Ramses is going to record some of his military success, which is debatable because we are talking about the Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BC. And what Ramses wanted you to know about that was how strong he was, but he kind of gets around to the fact about the outcome of the Battle of Kadesh. He wants people to know that he was a great leader and he fought courageously, and that Egypt is the strongest empire of the area. And we learn that, and we can actually see evidence of that because of the evidence of diplomacy, the evidence of some written tablets, the Amarna tablets, that are showing us the need for people to get along, the need for trade routes to be protected and safe, and people really want to be friends. This isn't just about going out there and dominating every other kingdom. This is really a lesson about trade and how you want to get along. Now, the Egyptian history, Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. New Kingdom, they're famous because they dominate people. They make a huge map. They go out there and defeat other kingdoms all the way into Nubia, and they pick up more gold mines and authority and wealth way in the south. That's getting into Africa, getting into Ethiopia. And they go way to the north, to the northeast at the Battle of Kadesh, coming up against the Hittites during the New Kingdom time period. So Egypt is big. They are famous. What are they doing here? They are building more ships. Where did they get those cedar logs? They got them really close to where the Battle of Kadesh is. If you win the Battle of Kadesh, you will control the area that has cedar logs. Now, why do you want to control lumber? Like, what is it about cedar? Do you know that Egypt doesn't really grow trees, right? It's a desert. This was a basic Egypt lesson, that the flooding rivers of the Nile are the whole reason why you even exist, because agriculture is easy. It brings water, it brings silt and good soil, but it does not bring trees. So if you want power and authority, you need bronze weapons, you need ships made from cedar. And they grow close to Kadesh. They grow in the area of Canaan, the Levant, the Phoenician area, the city-states of Tyre and Sidon. So if you could control Kadesh, you could get yourself more cedar, more ships, and there's also trade routes. Of course, you're getting very close to the Silk Road. So let's head north with one of the great new inventions of the Bronze Age, the chariot. And let's battle against let's get outside of Egypt and let's move on, see who else is powerful during the Bronze Age. And let's go and confront the Hittites in this famous Battle of Kadesh. It's really famous because of the chariots. It's really famous because it's Egypt pushing the maximum distance away from their empire. So the Battle of Kadesh, really the turning point battle, 1274 BC. Would Egypt become even more of a superpower than they already are? But they're fighting against the Hittites, who themselves are a significant empire around Anatolia. Both of these, Hittites and the Egyptians, are pushing the maximum distance away from their home kingdom, trying to build a bigger empire. So whoever wins this is going to start to encroach on the other empire, right? But the Battle of Kadesh is a stalemate. Neither one wins, neither one loses. Ramses tries to go back and say how great it was, but ultimately, this is one of the ways the house of cards is going to collapse. Nobody is going to grow. Nobody's going to increase their power and authority beyond what this map is. In fact, you're going to see that Egypt is going to start to lose authority. So let's move on. So since Egypt is not the only heavyweight champion in the Bronze Age arena, we head north to the rugged lands of Anatolia. It's modern-day Turkey. And this is a formidable power, challenging the Egyptians, and we saw it at the Battle of Kadesh. Hittites are tough, they're innovative, strong in their military. They've got good government. They've got strong leaders. They've got city walls. Hattusa is a well-fortified city. And look at their strategic location. So they're touching the Silk Road. They're connected with trade routes, land routes, water. You can tell from the map that they can get to the Aegean Sea. They can get to the Mediterranean Sea. And if they had won the Battle of Kadesh, think about the way they would have challenged Egypt, possibly even taken over Egypt. So a lot to wonder about. But the Hittites during this empire period, the kingdoms that they controlled, they typically, in their military success, they didn't destroy people. They just taxed them. They were polytheistic like pretty much everybody else, but they wanted to get along with their partner over there to the west. If you want the deep dive research and a guide for everything Bronze Age, just to help you keep track, go to classicalkingdoms.com. I have deep dive research downloads. There are free sample lessons. There is a richer course experience available, classicalkingdoms.com. So don't miss out on the extended features and the free downloads. How do we know that Mesopotamia had influence Way over here in Canaan, we have clay tablets. Ugaritic text. Now, that's not the original Sumerian cuneiform. It's much improved, kind of an innovative, only 30 different signs, consonant sounds, no vowels. That's what the Greeks do. They give us vowels, and that's a Bronze Age development after the Bronze Age. After Linear B is out, the Greek alphabet is really going to take hold before Latin, which we're still using today. Anyway, I digress because this Ugaritic text told us a lot about the cultures, the cultural exchanges, and that becomes an international language for people traveling on trade routes, the Aramaic language, kind of the forerunner to that. And it helps us understand the Bronze Age cultures here. Sidon and Tyre, those are the Phoenician city-states. Megiddo, the northern, that's where we get the word Armageddon. And the future sites, which will be Jerusalem after the time of the kings, King David, all during the Bronze Age. And those are the Hebrew developments, the people in Canaan, the Phoenicians. We've got Cyprus to the north. We got Egypt. Everybody goes to Egypt and loves the style. Is there anybody else we still need to talk about out across the Aegean Sea? Remember the Minoans and look at how close they are to Egypt. And if you've watched the previous lesson on the Minoans, you know there's some artistic connections between the Minoans and the Egyptians. They traded quite a bit, as we've already mentioned. So let's back up in time just a little bit, because you can see that Egypt is not the only kind of heavyweight champions of the Bronze Age arena. Heading north to the rugged lands of Anatolia, that's modern-day Turkey, the Hittites are tough. They're innovative. They have strong military. They have developed societies. And if we check the map here, where those Hittite kingdoms are, they're very close and come in contact with the Trojans. So that story is coming soon. But let's talk Hittite Empire leading up to the Battle of Kadesh. And that's 1650 to 1180 BC. The Battle of Kadesh was 1274 BC. So by them not winning, we see they're probably going to kind of decline. And part of the reason why we've got a Bronze Age collapse that's coming, right, around 1200 BC, around the same time period. But there's a lot of success about the Hittites. They have a strong fortified capital city and many other kingdoms with good, strong walls. They had strong government. Their Hittite ruler was called like the Great King. Sounded a little bit like a pharaoh because he was also the high priest and the top general, ruler, priest, and not a god, but that pharaohs are gods, right? Their government seemed to be broader than just having a king call the shots, because they have like some form of an assembly. Their famed warriors are going to be the early pioneers of iron. So that's a way to end the Bronze Age, is invent another weapon or another metal that's going to put bronze out of business. So the Hittites do get credit with that. And also the three-person chariot. Yeah, that's a good one. Three-person chariot in warfare. So chariots are a big deal in the Bronze Age, and the Hittites help innovate. They called these Walusa people their trade partners and tried to have treaties with them. You call them Trojans. And a famous treaty called the Alexandru Treaty is actually kind of like saying the Alexandros, which is another name for Paris. And the Treaty of Paris, that's actually the Prince of Troy. So this early evidence, ancient key document, this treaty, it just shows that people wanted to get along. They wanted to have trade, and Troy is at a crossroads. If you're in Troy, you can sail right past and go into the area to connect with the Black Sea. You've got valuable farmland, fertile lands, and land trade routes to connect with the other Hittite kingdoms. So Troy has a bit of a mystery as to why they were different than Hittite kingdoms, and were they threatened by the Hittites? But we have the Alexandru Treaty that helps show they wanted to get along. And the story of the Trojan War is coming right up. This is lesson 24, and the Trojan War lesson is number 25. So Troy must be a significant Bronze Age power. They do not get taken over by the Hittites during this Bronze Age period. Archaeology shows that a lot of people came to Troy, and this was a way that they could connect and trade with the Hittites, is going through Troy. So the story of Troy and the Hittites shows you more evidence about how interconnected all the people are during the Bronze Age. So these treaty letters that might be referencing Prince Paris, they also make reference to other people. I'll mess up these names, but one is called the Tawagalawa letter. The Talagalawa letter, which gives evidence that they also wanted to get along with people that the Trojans traded with. And that could be reference to the Mycenaean Greeks. They called them the Ahiyawa. And we think that's the Mycenaeans wanting to connect through Troy with the Hittites. It's just more and more evidence that this world is interconnected. They find Greek pottery in Troy. They find Greek pottery with the Hittites. That's one of the Bronze Age key facts. We are trading with everybody. So of course, that's one of the most important things about the Bronze Age. There's trade and everybody is interconnected. So then let's move to a different region. What else should we talk about? Mesopotamia and how they connect, because they were the original cradle of civilization. They invented writing and everything maybe started there. Maybe that was your second favorite or your first favorite because of Hammurabi's law code, because of the first empire is from Mesopotamia. Babylon. Babylon's an unbelievably important city and remains so well past the Bronze Age. So you'll hear about Babylon, and that's where Hammurabi had the world's first law code. And who did they most frequently connect with? The people in Canaan. The people in Canaan, a crucial crossroads for trade, culture, migration. The Hebrew people, led by Abraham, left Mesopotamia and came through to where it says future site. Do you know what future site that actually is? Future site of Jerusalem. And Abraham and the Hebrew people would have stopped there. There are a lot of different civilizations, small kingdoms in Canaan. And how do we know that these cities were connected, especially to Mesopotamia? They're kind of using a Mesopotamian type of language. These cuneiform tablets, now we're seeing, it's called the Ugarit, and it's kind of almost like an alphabet. It's 30 signs, each just with consonants. And that's one of the big innovations that the Greeks started putting vowels in. So just consonant sounds, but it's way simpler, like it's a way better writing system. And so when we find them all over this, we see evidence that trade, because these are trade records, business records, trade is a big deal. So let's zoom out, because not far from Canaan, not far from Egypt, are the Minoans, Bronze Age Minoans, remember from a previous lesson, and head north to Greece. The Mycenaeans, Bronze Age Mycenaeans, are the ones that took power away from the Minoans. And they're going to be the ones that take you into the Trojan War. Coming next, more reason why the Bronze Age collapse, why this house of cards is going to come undone. The world is connected, and it's a world on the brink as we approach 1200 BC, the approximate time for the Trojan War. And also the time that scholars say the Bronze Age ends. The Trojan War is the last big bang. Okay, Bronze Age expert, so which kingdom is your second favorite? This is an incredible time period. There's so much global connection, cultural diffusion, evidence of this everywhere. The Bronze Age, like, you just pick a shipwreck, maybe the most famous shipwreck. Maybe you barely escaped if you were one of those merchant traders, if your family was one of those people involved in trade and your ship crashes off the coast of Turkey. There's a famous one called the Eluberan shipwreck. And they found things from 7 different cultures all over the world. 10 tons of things were discovered in the shipwreck. And it's like a time capsule. And you can go to museums, and I've done this. It's just amazing to see the treasures that are like in the Greek Museum. So call yourself a Bronze Age expert. You know what to watch out for. You know what makes a civilization strong. You know the time periods of the Bronze Age, and you know the most important civilizations that had significant power and will continue to matter into the future. But what kind of wisdom do you need to extract to help prevent a collapse like this? It's a bit of a mystery, and it should generate a real sense of wonder every time you engage in learning about a new civilization. If you think that we are in a connected world just like the Bronze Age, based on a recent innovation, bronze because they put 12% tin, and that's their new tools. And they say we're in the information age. This is a new information age. That's our tool now because we have fast communication. We can learn anything. You can watch a lesson on YouTube like you're doing right now. Information, bronze, interconnectedness, success and strength and power. In this connected world, what wisdom would be the best? So I don't have answers. I just have the question for you. What lessons does this connected world teach us? And how could you extract some wisdom and carry forward from the Bronze Age, apply it to the age that you live in now? And you're not quite done yet. You'll never stop learning new things about the Bronze Age, but I hope this context and important people in the time frame will give you a better understanding of everything Bronze Age. And am I going to see you hiding inside a Trojan horse? Is that because if you can win a war, you would think you could prevent the Bronze Age collapse from happening? And maybe you're especially excited about what's coming next. You'll learn in future lessons we've got a gap coming. The Bronze Age collapse is real, and it will cause a dark age. But after that, iron is developed. It's going to come from the Hittites, actually. And with that, we will call it the Iron Age. Are there any other civilizations on this map that could save the Bronze Age? If we could change any part of the story so that the Bronze Age doesn't actually collapse, what would it be? Leave it in the comments. Like right now, we're wrapping things up. We're going to go back to Crete. We know that they have volcanoes. So if you put that in the chat, that we should stop the volcanoes or stop the earthquakes, because that is one of the theories, that weakened enough of these Bronze Age civilizations for enough of a period of time that it was a struggle that was just too difficult to overcome. But the Minoans, you already know from a previous lesson that they collapse to be taken over really by the Mycenaeans, by the mainland Greeks. And the mainland Greeks, led by the Mycenaeans, the Spartans, they're the ones that invade Troy. And they do it around 1200 BC. One of the last big events of this Bronze Age before the collapse. Did you come up with anything that would help prevent the Bronze Age collapse? This Bronze Age collapse could be caused by internal conflicts and struggles, the governments just being weakened. When you go have a war, if it's the Trojan War or the Battle of Kadesh, you are expending a lot of resources. It does weaken you some. And if you combine that with some of the volcanoes and the earthquakes that we know are happening out there in Crete, Santorini, in the Aegean Sea, which could affect the food supplies because if crop failures because of the ash, the climate change because of the volcanic activity, and just the expense of fortifying your cities, maintaining your military power, that could be Egypt's problem. That could be Hittite's problem. And the Trojan War story, kind of where we're aiming you, largely a myth to try to explain something that's difficult to explain, which is when the Greeks win this war, why was there a collapse, a kind of a dark age, a Bronze Age collapse after this? This is a perfect storm of problems, potential problems, and leads us to the Bronze Age collapse. But my question to you is, what would you carry forward from this age? The story of the Bronze Age is dazzling achievement and a devastating loss. It reminds us that progress isn't always linear, very interconnected, and choices that societies make and factors that affect them and cause them to decline. How they manage the resource, how they have treaties with each other, they want trade, and how natural disasters can affect them. So the question, if we live in a connected world, maybe today it's the information age, not the Bronze Age, but we are a well-connected world. What wisdom, what virtuous wisdom and practice could you take from understanding the way the world works? And the way it worked in the Bronze Age, why isn't it very similar to the way the world works now? Thank you for taking time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history. Some classical truth for your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.